So hello, back for lecture 2 on chapter 7. The first lecture covered unemployment in the labor market, and the second lecture, is going to cover inflation. And this will probably be many different parts because there's a lot to cover with inflation. So let's get going. First we have inflation, which describes the general increase in the prices of goods and services. So it doesn't mean that if you have inflation, the prices of all goods are going up. It means that the prices of most goods, maybe many goods, are going up, and they would outweigh the prices of goods that are going down. Then on deflation is when, on average, there is a decrease in prices. And deflation is normally a sign that your economy is quite weak, that consumers are not buying very much, and that most likely you are in a recession, which means you're inside your production possibilities frontier by quite a bit. And then one of the main goals of macroeconomic policy is to maintain price stability. Try to keep prices as low as possible. When prices are increasing, we like them to be increasing at a moderate rate. So price stability probably means we like to have prices increasing probably at 1 to 2% a year. Those seem to be pretty good numbers that the Federal Reserve likes. Now we looked at the measurement of inflation for all the goods and services in GDP, which is called the GDP deflator. And then in Chapter 7, we're going to look at a measurement of price increases that is tied to what consumers buy. And so for you and I, the measurement that matters to us in our households is the Consumer Price Index. So a big part of the exam for Section 2 is the Consumer Price Index. And this is the main inflation measurement tool that the Bureau of Labor Statistics generates. The GDP deflator comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and then from the Bureau of Labor Statistics we get the Consumer Price Index. There's also things like the Producer Price Index that looks at the goods that producers buy. But we're going to concentrate our efforts on the Consumer Price Index because that affects, again, you and I mostly. So what does the Consumer Price Index do? It tracks price increases on the goods and services that American households tend to buy on a regular basis. And these are based on the prices, and it does include sales tax of the market basket of goods and services that are purchased on a monthly basis. So you and I tend to buy things on a regular basis, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they track that, and they come up with this market basket of goods that they believe the typical American consumer tends to buy each month. And so what they do is they send out individuals to measure prices at about 23,000 retail stores, supermarkets, gas stations, healthcare facilities, and other types of stores and services outlets. And like I mentioned earlier, I had in the past I've had quite a few students who have worked for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they worked on a part-time basis, and they would go out and they would collect data, prices of goods and services. And if you're ever walking through the supermarket, you would probably see people looking at prices, scanning them. They could be a competitor, they could be working for the supermarket, or they could be working for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, collecting data that gets used to put into the Consumer Price Index. And what we have down here is we have a market basket of goods. There's a similar type of chart in your book. And so these are the main categories that go into this market basket. And this is going back to 2014. One of the problems with the CPI is that they don't change this every year. They change it maybe, once every 5, 6, 7 years. And that does create a problem, a problem in terms of maybe the CPI overstates inflation, which we'll talk more about later. But here we have 42.2%. And this would go into housing, and then we have food and beverage for 15%, and we have apparel for 3.4%, transportation is 15%, and so on. And so they weight the prices of the goods and services we buy by how much of the basket it takes up. And so here, 15.27% of the CPI is accounted for with prices of food and beverages. And then we can see that during any particular year, some of the prices go up, some of them go down. This is from 2017. So you can see that tobacco prices went up quite a bit down here with the percent. And so larger changes here. Medical care, that seems to be happening each year. Energy prices, they can go up or down quite a bit. They're quite volatile. Housing, hospital services, and down here these went down. Utility gas services, that probably is due all the fracking going on that decreased the price of natural gas, fruits and vegetables, apparels, and so on. So again, some prices go up, some go down, but overall we tend to have inflation each and every year. Now, to generate the CPI, you have to have, again, let's call it a base year. And again, we have to start our measurement somewhere. We have to calibrate it. And the calibration is done by selecting the base year, and the value of the base year is set to be 100. And I don't have you memorize too many numbers on any exam, but there is one number I expect you to know, and that is that the CPI for the base year, no matter what calendar year the base year is always going to be 100. So if they pick 2019 to be the base year, that now becomes 100. If it is 2010, that becomes 100, and so on. And therefore, you can compare pretty fast the current CPI with the base year to see what's happened to prices. So for example, if the CPI for a given year is higher than 100, that means what? Well, it means that prices are higher than they were the base year because the index is higher. And if the CPI for a given year is lower than 100, then what do we know from that? What does that tell us? It tells us that whatever year that is, prices are lower in that year than they were in the base year. So here we have some calculations we can do. And what I did, and this is exactly what the Bureau of Labor Statistics does, it collects data on the market baskets here. And these are the actual prices of each market basket for each of these years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If this is real, these numbers are actually made up by me. But if these are real numbers, and this would say to buy the market basket of goods in year 5 would cost $3,100. To buy the exact same market basket of goods in year 4 would cost $3,000, and so on. And to buy the exact same market basket of goods in year 1 would cost $2,000. So the increase in the dollar amounts here is a good measurement of prices. And so we're going to convert these numbers into the CPI, and we'll do the calculations over here. And the calculation is pretty simple. You take this market basket value in year X, whatever year that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or for 1999, 2000, 2001, and so on. Divide that by the market basket value in the base year, and then you times by 100. So we have 5 years here. Let's pick this one as the base year. It doesn't matter. So we'll say year 1 is the base year. And so we take the market basket, and we can leave the dollars out because they're going to cancel out. So the market basket in year 1 is 2,000. The market basket in the base year, same number, same year. And then you times 100. And that's why we times 100, because it's going to take this number into 100. Because 2,000 divided by 2,000 is 1. 1 times 100 is 100. And that's why the market basket, that's why the CPI for the base year is always equal to 100, because you're dividing the number by itself. All the rest would be different because these are different numbers. So for year 2, you would take the 2,200, divide by 2,000, and then times 100. So I get my calculator out. So we have 2,200 divided by 2,000, and that's 1.1 times that by 100, and that gives us 110. Here we take 2,500, divide by, again, 2,000, times 100. Here we take 3,000, divide by 2,000, times 100. And then we take 3,100, divide by 2,000, times 100. And that's all you have to do. So again, all the calculations, we divide each one by 2,000, which is the base year. And so we take 2,500 divided by 2,000, and that's 1.25 times 100, and that gives us 125. And then we take 3,000, divide by 2,000, And that's 1.5 times 100 is 150. And the last one, we take 3,100, divide by 2,000 times 100, and that is 155. Proportionally, we haven't really done anything. Going from 2,000 to 2,200 has the same proportion as 100 to 110. And if you think about it, going from 100 to 110 is a 10% increase. Well, it's also a 10% increase here. 200 from 2,000 is 10% increase, so that goes up by 10%. This goes up by 10%. So really, the CPI doesn't change anything based on what we learned from the market basket of goods. It's just a way to reduce these larger numbers into maybe a more easily used index. And also what it does, it allows us to set the index, the CPI, equal to 100 for the base year. And the current base year used by the Bureau of Labor Statistics is actually an average of 3 years, 82, 83, and 84. And that is the current base year. And they do that so that they can sort of, if there was any kind of, like for example, there was an unusual increase in prices for, say, the base year, there was a fluke, then that would distort the numbers all the way down. It might make inflation look higher or lower than maybe it really is. And so what they do is they reduce the impact of any particular high or low prices existing during any year. And if you average it over 3 years, you tend to minimize that impact. So a simple way to make any kind of weird result less noticeable in the data. And we'll stop there.